Why is programming so hard to learn? Like, I think programming concepts and syntax in general and just everything that goes into programming isn't actually that difficult to learn. I think that it's just the teachers. And people just don't know how to teach programming properly. Or like, because programming takes so long to learn, you have to learn from so many different people, and it's just, there's no unified system about going through all of it, which is extremely annoying, I feel. Because, like, going through college, I'm a senior. Why was it that, like, I learned Java first? You learn methods, and then you start to learn other languages, like more functional languages, like Python, and you learn about functions, and they just say that they're the same thing. But then there's nuance between them, which they don't actually teach you. And then I'm taking compilers, and the book we're reading goes into subroutines, which is basically just the overall concept that both of those fit into. And it was the first time that all of that actually clicked for me. And I kind of wish that, like the idea of subroutines would just talk to me from the beginning. Same with like when I was learning C, why were like I was never explained what structs were other than they hold data, but I was so confused, like, why use a struct if you can just use a class like in Java? But then when I was learning about records and how records are, and what they actually are like as a concept, it made the syntax of records and structs actually click. And I just don't understand why I couldn't have been taught that in the first place. And there's so many like why don't these curriculums just teach the overall concepts and then everything that fits into them, so that you can actually learn like a bajillion programming languages extremely easily? Because now I feel like learning a programming language for me is not that difficult, but just knowing one language very well, it's like you can only really learn languages that are similar to it, like without having difficulty, because you're just constantly relearning things. Maybe this is just something that's wrong with me and my brain, but I find that knowing like the overall broad concept makes learning everything that's like sub to it is a lot easier. Like now it kind of finally clicked that like functions, methods, and just like the general concept of subroutine is, because I learned subroutines. And then I never even learned like the difference between formals and actuals, and that like formals are parameters pretty much, but then actuals are like the arguments going in. Like I always like kind of understood them as the exact same thing, like they're just parameters that can go in and out, but they're actually like nuance between the differences. And I was never taught that there's just a bajillion little things that I feel like if I just learned the high level like programming language concept of it, and then learned language specific versions, it would be much easier to understand everything. And it's kind of like inspiring me to make my own tutorial series on learning programming languages. So I don't really know what language I would use. Probably like Python or Java or some sort of like C related language. Yeah. I kind of just wish curriculums were better, especially for college. And I wish, it's just annoying, bro. And a lot of the times they teach these concepts in a way that only fits certain learning styles. Like maybe that's just a teacher specific thing. but I'm very visual in my learning. And I feel like data structures are extremely easy to learn when you have a visual to go with them and you teach them in a visual context so that you can like actually imagine how they work and imagine the process that they go through. Which I get a lot of people do use that with like websites to visualize them. But I feel like teaching around that is like the best way to go about it. And maybe that was just something wrong with my teacher. Because my teacher just had us learn straight up through code by coding the methods specific to them. But then it also kind of made us dependent on needing a description of the methods to write about to actually even be able to code those data structures. So I kind of still have like a loose understanding of each data structure. Like I know how everything works conceptually, but no ability to like fully develop one from scratch and like C or anything. But I can use them. I guess that's what matters. Being able to use them in like Python and Java, since they're all predefined. Another example earlier of like hash maps, and then the difference of that with dictionaries. Because I think they're the same thing. I don't actually know. I might have to look into that. But that's just like another different term used to call hash maps. Yeah.